Amelia Bennett sat in her seat aboard the sleek military transport plane, her notebook balanced on her lap, fingers nervously tapping the edge of the cover. She had never imagined herself in this situation. She was supposed to be covering the annual air show in Nevada, a task she had eagerly awaited for months, yet here she was, not in the press box with binoculars and cameras, but hurtling through the sky at thousands of feet, surrounded by officers and pilots whose calm confidence made her own nerves seem insignificant. The cabin smelled faintly of fuel and metal, a sharp contrast to the coffee and paper scent of her usual workspace, and the low hum of the engines vibrated through the floor, rattling her thoughts as much as the plane itself. Amelia's eyes darted from one pilot to another, noticing the small gestures that made their work seem almost effortless, the quick check of gauges, the silent hand signals, the soft muttered conversations that seemed coded, almost secret, and yet carried such weight and importance. She clutched her notebook closer, not because she intended to write anything yet, but because the familiar object gave her a fragile sense of security amidst the controlled chaos surrounding her. Every so often, she caught herself staring out of the small oval window, marveling at the view of the sky, endless and pale, with clouds drifting like islands of cotton in a blue ocean. The sunlight reflected off the wing, glinting like a silver blade, and she felt a mix of awe and fear at the vastness around her, a reminder of how small she truly was in this immense, mechanical world. A sudden bump made her inhale sharply, her knuckles whitening around the notebook, and she glanced nervously at the nearest officer, a tall man named Robert who seemed utterly unshaken, as if turbulence were a joke meant for less experienced travelers. Robert's calm demeanor only made Amelia's anxiety more apparent, yet she could not help but admire his poise, wondering how someone could remain so steady while the world shook around them. She thought of her own life back home, of her small apartment filled with books, of her morning routine that seemed mundane but comforting, of her friends' laughter and the predictable rhythm of ordinary days. And yet, as she looked around the cabin, Amelia realized she had stepped into a world far removed from ordinary. Here, decisions were immediate, consequences severe, and courage demanded more than words could ever describe. The thought both terrified and exhilarated her. She tried to focus on her breathing, in and out, slow and steady, reminding herself that she was here to observe, to witness, to report, and perhaps, unknowingly, to participate in something far larger than a story. Her mind wandered to the pilots, young men and women who had spent years training for moments like these, whose lives revolved around precision, timing, and trust in both machines and each other. She imagined the countless hours of practice, the meticulous routines, the sacrifices of time with family and friends, all for the chance to soar through the sky and handle emergencies that most people would never comprehend. Amelia's admiration grew with each glance at the focused faces around her, yet a part of her questioned her own relevance, her own purpose in this metallic vessel suspended in the clouds. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the intercom, calm and professional, announcing that the crew would begin routine checks before entering restricted airspace. Amelia's heart jumped at the sound, her fingers tightening around the notebook as the pilots moved with swift efficiency, flipping switches, confirming coordinates, and exchanging precise, clipped words that held meaning she could not fully grasp. The rhythm of their actions was almost hypnotic, a blend of discipline and instinct, and she found herself caught between admiration and a pang of inadequacy, feeling like a mere shadow amidst the activity. She turned her gaze back to the window, the desert below stretching endlessly, a tapestry of muted browns and reds, dotted with small towns and roads that seemed tiny from her lofty vantage point. The vastness was humbling, a reminder of how fleeting one's presence could be against the immensity of the world. Amelia's thoughts drifted to the air show she was meant to cover, imagining the crowds cheering, the engines roaring in displays of skill and precision, the cameras capturing every twist and loop. She realized with a strange clarity that while she had come to observe, she was now part of a journey that carried risks far beyond what she had expected. A subtle vibration ran through the floor again, softer this time, a mere reminder of altitude adjustments or minor turbulence, yet it caused her stomach to flutter nervously. She glanced at the co-pilot, a young woman named Claire, whose serene expression contrasted sharply with Amelia's tense posture. Claire's hands moved over the controls with fluid familiarity, every motion purposeful and deliberate, almost like a dance performed at incredible speed. Amelia tried to follow the logic, imagining which buttons controlled which systems, how small errors could cascade into catastrophe, and how much trust the crew must place in one another to maintain safety at all times. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, yet beneath it bloomed a strange fascination, a curiosity that made her lean slightly forward, her notebook now resting loosely, as if she wanted to record not just words, but the essence of what she was witnessing. Amelia's eyes wandered again, noting small details, a pilot adjusting the strap of her helmet, the slight tilt of a dashboard, the way sunlight caught the edges of instruments, casting sharp shadows that danced with the hum of electronics. Each motion was precise, purposeful, and imbued with quiet authority, a language of its own that spoke of discipline, experience, and vigilance. Amelia felt a growing respect, a sense that she was observing more than skill. She was witnessing dedication, resilience, and the invisible threads of teamwork that held the entire operation together. The plane shuddered slightly as it changed altitude, and Amelia pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the pulse of adrenaline and excitement mix with anxiety. She realized that she was alive in a way she had not felt before, acutely aware of each sound, movement, and sensation, as if the moment itself had demanded full presence. Her mind wandered to the lives of those pilots outside the window, their families, their dreams, their fears, and she felt an unexpected kinship with them, despite knowing them only as fleeting figures within this airborne capsule. Amelia took a deep breath, forcing herself to release the tension in her shoulders, attempting to synchronize her heart with the steady rhythm of the plane. She reminded herself that she was not powerless here. Her role, however small, mattered in the ecosystem of this flight. She could observe, record, and perhaps learn, absorbing lessons that extended beyond the pages of her notebook and into her understanding of courage, responsibility, and human resilience. Hours seemed to stretch simultaneously, the sky around her shifting in hues of pale blue, soft white clouds, and golden streaks of sunlight, as if time itself slowed to match the gravity of the journey. Amelia found herself thinking not of the assignment she had been sent to complete, but of the story unfolding around her in real time, a story of focus, of composure under pressure, of individuals quietly performing extraordinary feats. Her notebook remained untouched for now, yet her mind was alive with impressions, images, and reflections, each more vivid than any photograph could capture. She felt a strange bond forming, unspoken but undeniable, between herself and the crew, a connection forged through shared altitude, shared purpose, and shared humanity. Amelia glanced at the seat next to her, empty save for a small backpack, and thought about how ordinary objects could anchor extraordinary experiences. The notebook, a pen, even the simple act of breathing slowly in a room of metallic walls. Each small detail contributed to the tapestry of her memory, creating a mosaic of the journey that she knew would linger long after the engines had cooled and the plane had landed. A sudden announcement came over the intercom, this time alerting passengers to prepare for minor turbulence as they approached restricted airspace, and Amelia felt a familiar surge of apprehension. Yet this time, it was tempered by a quiet confidence she had not known. She possessed a recognition that while fear was natural, observation, calmness, and presence were equally powerful tools. She straightened in her seat, inhaled deeply, and allowed herself to watch the crew in action once more, noting the fluidity of their movements, the precision of their coordination, and the subtle cues exchanged without words. The plane shifted again, and Amelia's heart skipped a beat, but she reminded herself that she was safe, that the crew knew what they were doing, and that she had an opportunity to witness bravery in its purest form. The sunlight shifted as the hours passed, painting the cabin in warm, golden tones, illuminating faces lined with concentration and resolve. Amelia realized that she had never paid such careful attention to expressions, movements, or human interactions before, and that the intensity of this environment was sharpening her senses in ways she had never anticipated. Every glance, every gesture, every command carried weight, and Amelia felt a growing sense of responsibility not to act beyond her ability, but to remain aware, present, and supportive in whatever small ways she could. The hum of the engines became a background rhythm to her thoughts, a steady heartbeat that echoed the pulse of her own awareness, and she felt a sense of unity with everyone aboard, connected not by words, but by purpose, altitude, and circumstance. As she stared again out of the window at the vast, sprawling landscape below, Amelia understood that she had crossed a threshold. She was no longer merely a passenger, an observer from the outside, but a participant in an unfolding narrative of courage, focus, and quiet heroism. And as the plane continued its journey through the clouds, Amelia allowed herself to sit back slightly, exhaling slowly, letting the mixture of awe, fear, and exhilaration wash over her, knowing that whatever awaited her at the end of this flight, she would never forget the lessons, the sights, or the emotions of these extraordinary hours high above the world she once thought she knew so well. The calm that Amelia had struggled to maintain during the early hours of the flight began to shift when an unexpected alert sounded through the cockpit, a sharp chime that immediately drew the attention of every pilot and officer aboard. The planes ahead, part of the training squadron she had been observing, had lost communication with the control tower, and the urgency in the pilots' voices made Amelia sit up straighter, her heart pounding as adrenaline replaced the quiet awe she had been feeling just moments before. She listened closely as the co-pilot, Claire, spoke into her headset, issuing calm but firm instructions to the distant aircraft, and Amelia realized that she had no choice but to pay attention, to absorb every word and signal if she wanted to understand what was happening. A voice then crackled over the intercom, directing the passengers to remain seated and keep their seat belts fastened, but Amelia found herself unable to simply sit still, as her instincts seemed to push her toward action rather than observation. She watched as the pilots exchanged quick glances, their eyes sharp, scanning instruments, screens, and radar maps, every movement deliberate and urgent, and she felt an unusual mixture of fear and fascination, wondering how people could remain so composed under pressure while the consequences of any mistake could be catastrophic. The plane seemed to hum with tension, each vibration of the engines echoing through the floor as if the aircraft itself were aware of the gravity of the moment, and Amelia gripped her notebook again, this time not to write, but almost to anchor herself, to feel a sense of stability amidst the controlled chaos surrounding her. A sudden question from Claire startled her slightly. "Passenger 127, are you trained in emergency procedures?" Amelia blinked in surprise, her mind racing as she recalled a survival and first aid course she had taken years earlier for a personal project, never imagining she would need it in such a real and immediate way. She nodded, trying to keep her voice steady, and offered what knowledge she had, describing the basic steps to assist in emergencies, relay information clearly, and remain calm. The crew's initial looks of surprise quickly shifted to focused acknowledgement, and Amelia felt a flicker of confidence ignite inside her, a sense that perhaps she could contribute, even in the smallest way, to the situation unfolding around her. Claire directed Amelia to assist in monitoring the communications, explaining the call signs and procedures as she spoke, and though the terminology was complex, Amelia concentrated intently, repeating instructions in her mind and passing along updates with as much precision as she could manage. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously as she navigated the unfamiliar but urgent tasks, her mind hyper-aware of every sound, every movement, every vibration of the plane, as if the very air around her carried the weight of responsibility. She realized how delicate the balance was between calm control and chaos, how a single miscommunication could escalate into disaster, and yet how a composed mind, even one untrained in every detail, could still make a difference if it stayed attentive and clear. Outside the small window, she caught glimpses of the other planes, their sleek bodies cutting through the sky, sometimes close enough that she could see the pilots' focused faces through their visors, and she felt a strange kinship with them, a recognition that despite being passengers in vastly different roles, they were united in facing the same danger, the same responsibility to act decisively and correctly. Amelia's pulse raced as she passed messages from Claire to the distressed aircraft, repeating coordinates and safety instructions, correcting small miscommunications that could have caused confusion. Each successful transmission brought a mix of relief and tension, as if the plane itself exhaled in response to every small victory in the effort to prevent disaster. She became acutely aware of how her presence, her voice, her clarity mattered in this enclosed, airborne world, and for the first time, she felt an overwhelming sense of purpose, no longer merely a reporter observing a story, but an active participant whose actions, however small, could influence outcomes that meant life or death. The hours seemed suspended, the sky outside shifting from pale blue to soft golden hues as the sun moved across the horizon, casting warm light that contrasted with the chill of fear and concentration inside the cabin. Amelia noticed details she might have ignored under normal circumstances: the way the pilot's hands moved over controls without hesitation, the subtle nods and eye contact exchanged between crew members, the way even small sounds of clicking instruments or muttered codes carried meaning and reassurance. She realized that courage was not always loud or dramatic, it could be quiet, focused, and disciplined, manifesting as steady hands, calm voices, and attentive minds. As she continued relaying messages and supporting the pilots, Amelia felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Every successful step, every clear transmission, reinforced the delicate truth she was living in, that ordinary people, when faced with extraordinary circumstances, could rise to meet them with unexpected strength. The alert finally quieted slightly, but the tension did not fully dissipate, as the team needed to guide the distressed aircraft safely back to the runway. Amelia watched with unwavering focus as the F-22 jets moved into formation, circling and supporting the other aircraft, their presence both reassuring and awe-inspiring. Captain Daniel Harris spoke calmly into his headset, acknowledging Amelia's assistance and offering encouragement that steadied her more than she expected. "Passenger 127, you're doing excellent. Keep guiding them. We've got your back." His words, simple but sincere, filled her with a strange warmth, a sense that her actions were valued even in this professional, high-stakes environment. She felt a lump in her throat, not from fear this time, but from a quiet pride she could barely contain. Each instruction she passed along, each clarification she made, seemed to ripple through the cabin and out into the sky, contributing to the collective effort of the pilots working tirelessly to prevent an accident. The minutes stretched, but Amelia remained alert, noting subtle cues that indicated progress, slight changes in altitude, responsive adjustments from the distressed aircraft, and the coordinated maneuvers of the jets providing guidance and reassurance. Her senses were heightened, every detail amplified the slight whir of machinery, The soft beep of instruments, the tension in every glance exchanged between crew members. Yet amidst the pressure, she found herself learning lessons she had never anticipated, lessons in patience, in trust, in focus, in the power of clear communication, and most importantly, in the quiet strength of human determination. When the plane finally began its descent toward the runway, Amelia felt a surge of relief mixed with awe, realizing that her guidance, her presence, had played a role in this successful outcome. The F-22 jets flanked the distressed aircraft as it landed safely, engines roaring and tires skimming the runway with controlled precision, and Amelia exhaled deeply, allowing herself to relax for the first time in hours. She looked around at the crew, seeing expressions of quiet satisfaction, relief, and acknowledgement, and she felt a profound connection to them, a recognition that courage and calmness were contagious and could transform ordinary individuals into essential participants in critical moments. Her notebook remained closed now, but her mind was alive with observations, lessons, and reflections she knew she would carry forever, a mental record of the moment when she had been more than just passenger 127, when she had been someone whose attention, focus, and clarity had mattered, whose calm voice had helped navigate a potentially dangerous situation, and whose courage had been tested not by choice, but by circumstance. Amelia allowed herself to breathe slowly, to feel the pride and relief mingling in her chest, and she realized that this flight, which had begun as a routine assignment, had transformed into an experience that would shape her understanding of bravery, responsibility, and the impact of remaining present under pressure. She glanced once more out of the window at the endless sky, the planes that had supported the landing now forming precise patterns above the runway, and felt a strange sense of humility, knowing that while her actions had mattered, they were part of a larger, orchestrated effort, a delicate, coordinated ballet of skill, discipline, and dedication that she had been fortunate to witness and contribute to, even in a small but meaningful way. Amelia smiled faintly, feeling a warmth that came not from the sun outside, but from the knowledge that she had acted with presence, courage, and attention in a moment that demanded exactly that, and she understood that her journey was no longer simply about observing a story, but about experiencing, learning, and growing from the extraordinary events that had unfolded around her, a realization that made her feel alive, purposeful, and quietly heroic all at once. Amelia Bennett felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration as the plane leveled out after the tense emergency, her heart still beating rapidly from the intensity of the recent events, yet a strange calm settled over her as she realized the immediate danger had passed. She watched the pilots, each absorbed in their instruments and communications, their expressions betraying both relief and the lingering focus required for the remainder of the flight. Captain Daniel Harris gave a quiet nod to his co-pilot, Claire, and Amelia sensed the unspoken acknowledgement between the two, a silent language of respect and teamwork that she could not fully comprehend but deeply admired. The cabin felt charged with energy, yet there was also a soft hum of normalcy returning, the kind that came after high alert, when people allowed themselves to breathe but remained vigilant. Amelia's mind raced as she reflected on her own role in the crisis, replaying each moment in her head, analyzing her decisions, and recognizing how much she had learned in a short time. The fear she had felt earlier had transformed into a sense of purpose, a realization that even in unfamiliar circumstances, she could contribute, could remain calm, and could make a difference. Her eyes traveled to the window again, where the sunlight shimmered against the wings and clouds drifted lazily across the sky, and she felt a serene awe, a quiet connection to the vastness beyond the plane, and a growing respect for the pilots whose lives were so intertwined with the skies. The hum of the engines, once a source of anxiety, now seemed like a steady companion, a rhythm that mirrored the pulse of her own awareness, grounding her as she continued to assist the crew with communication checks and updates. She repeated call signs, verified coordinates, and relayed messages with precision, each action reminding her that even small contributions mattered in a high-stakes environment, and that attentiveness, clarity, and composure were powerful tools in moments of uncertainty. Amelia's thoughts wandered briefly to the families and loved ones of the pilots, imagining the sacrifices made, the early mornings, the late nights, the relentless training, and the constant readiness required for moments just like the one they had experienced. She felt an overwhelming respect for their dedication, recognizing that bravery was often quiet, disciplined, and unassuming, manifesting in steady hands, focused eyes, and thoughtful decisions rather than dramatic gestures. The F-22 jets, still visible in the distance, glided through the sky with a grace that seemed almost unreal, their presence a comforting reassurance that the team was not alone and that support could come from precise coordination and skill. Amelia realized that she was absorbing not just a story to write, but lessons in courage, teamwork, and the extraordinary strength of ordinary people when faced with challenges beyond their control. Her heart swelled with admiration as she continued to follow instructions, her voice steady even when her hands shook slightly from lingering adrenaline, and she recognized the quiet thrill of participating in a moment where skill, patience, and calmness could change outcomes and save lives. The minutes stretched as the plane continued on its route, yet each tick of the clock felt significant, each second an opportunity to remain focused, to observe, and to act responsibly. Amelia's awareness sharpened, noticing details she might have overlooked before, the subtle adjustments of a pilot's throttle, the precise hand signals exchanged, the soft beeping of instruments confirming stability, and the almost imperceptible tension in the cabin that reminded her of the immense responsibility they all carried. She felt a growing sense of connection to everyone aboard, a recognition that despite differences in training, experience, and roles, they shared a common purpose, a commitment to safety, and a mutual reliance on composure under pressure. Amelia reflected on how fear and courage could exist side by side, how moments of crisis could awaken a strength within herself that she had never recognized, and how presence, focus, and calm thinking could create order in situations that seemed overwhelming. She glanced at Claire, the co-pilot, whose quiet determination radiated competence and reassurance, and she felt inspired to emulate even a fraction of that composure, understanding that the impact of her actions, no matter how small, had already influenced the successful outcome of the previous emergency. Outside the window, the terrain below seemed to stretch endlessly, desert valleys and winding roads forming intricate patterns, the beauty and vastness of the world contrasting sharply with the intensity of the enclosed cabin, and Amelia felt a sense of humility, realizing how fleeting and fragile life could be, yet how meaningful each choice became when made with presence and care. She reflected on the news article she had intended to write, realizing that the story she was now living was far more profound than any she had planned to cover. It was a story of courage, of calmness under pressure, of human connection, and of the extraordinary strength found in moments when ordinary people rise to meet unexpected challenges. Amelia felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that while she was just one passenger, her attentiveness, her composure, and her willingness to act had mattered, and that the ripple effects of even small actions could extend far beyond what she could immediately see. The F-22 pilots, their presence both awe-inspiring and reassuring, continued their flight in formation, their precision and discipline a reminder that mastery came not only from skill, but from experience, preparation, and trust in oneself and others. Amelia's mind absorbed each detail, each movement, and each coordinated signal, recognizing that this experience was teaching her lessons she could never have learned in a quiet office or through second-hand accounts. Her awareness of the plane's rhythm, the flow of communication, and the unspoken bonds between the crew heightened, and she felt a profound respect for the way people could work together seamlessly under pressure, each action purposeful, each decision carefully measured. Hours seemed to blur as the flight continued, yet Amelia remained alert, her senses heightened by the recent emergency and the ongoing responsibility she carried, no longer a passive observer but an active participant in the shared effort of safety, skill, and composure. She reflected on the value of observation, recognizing that watching, listening, and absorbing information with focus could itself be a form of contribution, and that courage often manifested not in dramatic gestures, but in the quiet attentiveness and careful execution of essential tasks. Amelia glanced once more at the sky outside, the sun now dipping lower, casting golden and amber hues across the clouds and wings, and she felt a sense of serenity despite the lingering adrenaline. The experience had changed her perception of fear, courage, and human capability, and she realized that being present, attentive, and calm could transform moments of potential disaster into opportunities for growth, learning, and meaningful action. She allowed herself a small, quiet smile, feeling a mixture of pride, relief, and awe at the events she had witnessed and participated in, recognizing that this flight, which had begun as a simple assignment, had evolved into a profound journey of self-discovery, courage, and the power of human presence in moments that demanded it most. Amelia's gaze returned to the pilots, their movements precise, their focus unwavering, and she felt an unspoken gratitude for their guidance, mentorship, and example, understanding that the lessons she was absorbing would remain with her long after the engines had stopped and the plane had landed. In that moment, she knew she had become more than just passenger 127, she had become a participant in a story of skill, bravery, and quiet heroism, a story that would shape her understanding of courage, teamwork, and the extraordinary capacity of ordinary people to rise to extraordinary challenges when called upon. Amelia Bennett felt a strange mixture of anticipation and nervousness as the plane began its descent toward the airbase, her heart still fluttering from the intensity of the previous events, yet her mind focused on every detail, every sound, every movement around her. The pilots moved with calm efficiency, their hands steady on the controls, their eyes scanning instruments and the horizon with practiced precision, and Amelia felt a growing respect for the discipline and focus that had carried them through the recent crisis. She remained at her station, assisting with communications as instructed, repeating call signs, confirming coordinates, and ensuring that every transmission was clear, knowing that even the smallest error could have consequences in a situation where safety depended on precision and attention. The sky outside shifted gradually as the sun dipped lower, painting the clouds with shades of gold and pink, and Amelia felt a quiet sense of awe at the vastness above, the beauty of the world contrasted with the seriousness of the task at hand. Captain Daniel Harris, the lead pilot, spoke calmly into his headset, acknowledging the successful coordination with the distressed aircraft, and Amelia felt a surge of pride knowing that her voice had been part of the chain of communication that helped ensure a safe landing. The base came into view, the runway stretching like a silver ribbon through the desert landscape, and Amelia noticed the F-22 jets that had accompanied them earlier now breaking formation and preparing for separate landings, their sleek shapes glinting in the fading sunlight. She felt a mix of relief and anticipation, knowing that the landing itself, while routine for the pilots, would require continued focus, careful maneuvering, and steady nerves. The cabin hummed with a quiet tension as the crew executed their approach, and Amelia found herself holding her breath at each subtle adjustment, each minor shift in altitude, and each turn of the controls. She realized how much trust the pilots placed in each other, in their instruments, and even in passengers like her who were willing to observe, learn, and assist when needed. As the plane touched down with a smooth yet precise landing, Amelia exhaled deeply, a mixture of relief, pride, and lingering adrenaline coursing through her. The tires skidded slightly on the runway, and the engine's roar gradually softened as the aircraft slowed, bringing the passengers and crew back to solid ground. Amelia glanced around the cabin, noting the faces of the officers and pilots, their expressions a blend of satisfaction, relief, and quiet acknowledgement of the teamwork that had made this moment possible. She felt a deep connection to them, an unspoken understanding of the effort, skill, and courage it had taken to manage not only the emergency earlier but the precise and disciplined landing that concluded their flight. As the engines powered down and the aircraft came to a complete stop, Amelia allowed herself a moment to absorb the significance of what had just occurred. She had gone from being an ordinary passenger, nervous and uncertain, to someone whose calm presence and attentiveness had contributed to a high-stakes operation, and the reality of that achievement filled her with a profound sense of purpose and validation. The doors of the plane opened, and Amelia stepped onto the tarmac, the warm evening air brushing against her face, carrying the faint scent of fuel, dust, and the desert surroundings. She felt the weight of the moment, the mixture of relief, accomplishment, and awe that came from witnessing and participating in events that required courage, focus, and trust. As she followed the pilots and officers down the steps, she noticed a small group of F-22 pilots standing in formation near the runway, their helmets under their arms, their posture upright and disciplined, and Amelia felt an unexpected flutter of emotion, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Captain Harris approached, his gaze steady and serious, yet warm with recognition, and Amelia felt her chest tighten with anticipation. "Passenger 127, he said clearly, his voice carrying across the quiet hum of the tarmac, "thank you for your composure and assistance today. You were part of the success." One by one, the other pilots turned toward her, each lifting a hand in salute, a gesture of respect and acknowledgement that Amelia had never experienced before. She felt her eyes well with tears, not from fear, not from exhaustion, but from the overwhelming recognition that her actions, her calm presence, and her attentiveness had mattered in a tangible and profound way. The moment felt surreal, as if time had slowed, allowing her to fully absorb the honor and significance of the gesture. Amelia's mind replayed the events of the flight, the turbulence, the alert, the tense communications, and her role in guiding instructions to the distressed aircraft, and she realized that every small choice, every clear instruction, and every calm breath she had taken contributed to this acknowledgement. The salute from the pilots was more than a formal gesture, it was a recognition of courage, of composure, and of the human capacity to rise to challenges even when unexpected and daunting. Amelia felt a warmth spreading through her, a mixture of pride, humility, and gratitude, and she knew that this moment would stay with her for the rest of her life, shaping her understanding of bravery and the impact of being present, attentive, and courageous in critical moments. The other officers around her nodded quietly, offering small smiles and gestures of acknowledgement, and Amelia realized that the experience was not only about recognition but also about the connection formed through shared experience, trust, and responsibility. She took a slow breath, letting the reality sink in, the sun now casting long shadows across the tarmac, illuminating the faces of those who had been part of this journey and those whose presence had inspired her to remain composed and focused. Captain Harris spoke again, his voice carrying a tone of genuine respect and admiration. "Passenger 127, you showed what it means to remain calm under pressure, and that is why you are honored today." Amelia's heart swelled as she nodded, unable to fully articulate her feelings, realizing that words were not enough to capture the profound impact of the acknowledgement, the recognition that her presence had mattered, and the understanding that courage often comes in quiet, disciplined, and attentive forms. The F-22 pilots continued to stand in formation, their eyes steady, their posture unwavering, a living testament to skill, discipline, and the honor that comes from recognizing bravery in others. Amelia felt a deep sense of belonging, a recognition that even as a civilian, she had participated in a story of courage, precision, and extraordinary human effort, and that the honor she received was a reflection of her willingness to remain present, focused, and calm when it mattered most. She glanced around at the tarmac, at the grounded jets, at the crew who had guided her and supported the flight, and she felt an overwhelming gratitude, a quiet understanding of the interconnectedness of every action, every decision, and every gesture in shaping outcomes that could impact lives. Amelia's thoughts returned to the beginning of the journey, to the nervous anticipation she had felt boarding the plane, to the uncertainty of being passenger 127, and she marveled at the transformation that had occurred, both within herself and in the perception of those around her. She had moved from being an observer to being an active participant, from nervous uncertainty to quiet courage, and from anonymity to recognition in a way that filled her with a profound sense of purpose. The sun continued its descent, casting a warm glow over the runway and the planes, and Amelia felt a sense of closure, of completion, yet also of growth and understanding. The salute of the pilots, simple yet profoundly meaningful, would remain etched in her memory forever, a symbol of courage, respect, and the extraordinary human capacity to rise to challenges when called upon. Amelia allowed herself a small smile, feeling the warmth of accomplishment and honor, understanding that her journey was no longer just a story to report but a story to live, remember, and carry forward as a testament to the power of calmness, attentiveness, and courage. She knew that passenger 127 would never again feel like just a number, just a seat on a plane, just a bystander. She had become part of something larger, something meaningful, and something that would forever remind her of the strength, resilience, and honor found in moments when ordinary people meet extraordinary circumstances with grace, composure, and bravery. Amelia Bennett walked slowly across the tarmac, the evening sun casting long golden shadows over the grounded jets, her mind still replaying the extraordinary moments of the day as if they were fragments of a dream she could not fully grasp, yet every detail felt vivid and alive, etched into her memory with clarity and intensity. She glanced at the F-22 pilots standing in precise formation, their salutes still lingering in her mind, and she felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of pride, humility, and awe that she had never experienced before. The ordinary assignment she had expected, a routine news article, a simple report on the air show, had transformed into a journey of courage, focus, and human connection that had challenged her, stretched her, and revealed a strength within her that she had not known existed. Each step she took across the tarmac felt heavy with meaning, every sound of boots on concrete echoing like a heartbeat of the day, reminding her of the moments when she had held her own in a world far removed from the safe, predictable rhythm of her usual life. Amelia reflected on the tense hours in the air, the sudden emergency that had demanded composure, and the realization that even as a civilian, her calm presence, attention to detail, and willingness to act had made a tangible difference, guiding communications and helping the distressed aircraft safely to the runway. She remembered the precise movements of the pilots, their silent coordination, their fluid efficiency, and she felt a profound respect for the countless hours of training, sacrifice, and dedication that had prepared them for moments like these, moments when every decision, every gesture, every second carried weight and significance far beyond ordinary understanding. The sense of connection she felt with them now was quiet but undeniable, a bond forged through shared purpose, trust, and the acknowledgement of effort and courage, and she realized that it was a bond that transcended words, ranks, or titles, rooted instead in the human capacity to rise to challenges when called upon. Amelia's gaze drifted over the F-22 jets, sleek and powerful, now resting silently on the tarmac, and she imagined the incredible skill, discipline, and courage it took to maneuver these machines through the sky with precision and control, particularly in moments of danger when split-second decisions determined outcomes that could affect lives in profound ways. She thought of Captain Daniel Harris, whose calm voice and measured commands had guided the team, whose subtle encouragement had steadied her, and whose respect and acknowledgement in the form of that unforgettable salute had left a lasting impression on her heart and mind. Amelia felt the emotions swell within her, relief that the flight had ended safely, pride in her own composure and contributions, gratitude for the lessons she had learned, and a deep sense of awe at the professionalism, skill, and quiet courage that surrounded her. She recalled the rhythm of the cabin, the hum of engines, the subtle beeps of instruments, the glances and nods between pilots, and the coordination that had turned chaos into safety, danger into control, and anxiety into calm action. Each memory brought a vivid lesson, that courage often manifests quietly, in presence and focus, that ordinary people can rise to extraordinary challenges when circumstances demand it, and that recognition, respect, and connection can come from actions small and large, often unseen by the wider world but profoundly meaningful to those involved. Amelia paused near the steps of the plane, her hand lightly touching the metal railing as she reflected on her journey, realizing that she had grown in ways she had not anticipated, that the experience had shifted her understanding of bravery, responsibility, and human potential. She thought of the civilians she knew, the predictable routines, and the quiet challenges of everyday life, and she understood that while those struggles were different in scale and intensity, the principles remained the same. Presence, calmness, attention, and courage were essential tools for navigating challenges, whether in the air thousands of feet above the ground or in the ordinary spaces of daily life. Amelia's attention returned to the pilots, who now relaxed slightly but remained poised, their eyes scanning the surroundings, their posture still disciplined yet softened by the successful conclusion of the flight, and she felt a sense of inspiration, realizing that dedication and skill were most admirable not in moments of ease, but in moments of pressure and demand, when calm focus and precise action could make all the difference. She allowed herself a small smile, acknowledging the honor she had received through their salutes, understanding that it was not just a symbolic gesture, but a heartfelt recognition of her courage, presence, and contribution to an event that could have ended in tragedy if not for collective effort and attentive action. Amelia felt a sense of completeness as she walked toward the waiting vehicles, the sun now dipping toward the horizon, painting the desert landscape in warm amber and gold, and she reflected on how ordinary circumstances could transform into extraordinary experiences, how fear could be tempered by composure, and how recognition could arrive from the most unexpected sources when one rose to the occasion. She thought of her story, the article she had come to write, and realized that it would now carry a depth and authenticity impossible to convey through observation alone. It would carry her lived experience, her first-hand understanding of courage, teamwork, and human resilience, and it would honor not only her role but the skill, dedication, and bravery of the pilots who had taught her, inspired her, and included her in a moment that transcended ordinary life. Amelia's heart felt full as she glanced back one last time at the F-22 jets, the pilots still standing in quiet formation, a living testament to discipline, respect, and courage, and she felt a profound connection not only to them but to the broader human capacity for bravery, focus, and action when faced with challenges beyond imagination. She thought of the quiet lessons she had absorbed, the moments when fear transformed into purpose, and the realization that being present, attentive, and composed could have tangible, meaningful effects on outcomes in ways she had never anticipated. As she stepped into the vehicle that would take her from the tarmac to the base, Amelia felt a renewed sense of confidence, understanding that her experience as passenger 127 had shifted her perspective on herself, on courage, and on the extraordinary potential that resides within ordinary individuals when faced with extraordinary circumstances. The hum of the vehicle's engine seemed to echo the rhythm of her thoughts, a calm accompaniment to the lingering excitement, reflection, and awe she felt as she replayed the events in her mind. She thought of how the salutes of the pilots had spoken volumes without a single word, how acknowledgement and respect could be conveyed through simple, meaningful gestures, and how such moments could leave an imprint on a person's heart forever. Amelia felt gratitude not only for the recognition she had received but for the opportunity to witness, participate, and learn, for the courage she had discovered within herself, and for the inspiration drawn from those who had shown skill, discipline, and bravery in the highest measure. She realized that her journey had taught her more than any article, photograph, or interview ever could. It had taught her about human strength, composure under pressure, trust, connection, and the profound impact of ordinary people rising to extraordinary occasions. As the vehicle moved away from the airbase, Amelia allowed herself to relax fully for the first time, the golden light of sunset casting a warm glow over her face, and she felt a sense of completion, understanding that while the day had been filled with tension, challenge, and moments of uncertainty, it had also been filled with triumph, learning, and quiet heroism that would remain with her forever. She knew that passenger 127 was no longer just a number, a seat on a plane, or a bystander in someone else's story. She had become part of a narrative that would shape her, inspire her, and remind her always of the extraordinary potential within calm focus, attentiveness, and courage. Amelia smiled softly, the memory of the salutes, the flight, the teamwork, and the lessons learned settling into her mind like a treasure, a reminder that ordinary people can rise to extraordinary moments, that courage manifests in quiet ways, and that recognition, respect, and honor are often found in the simplest yet most profound gestures. As the desert landscape rolled by, Amelia felt a deep peace, a sense of accomplishment, and a new understanding of herself, knowing that this journey, this flight, this day, this extraordinary experience would remain a part of her forever, shaping her perspective, her story, and her heart in ways she could never have imagined when she had first boarded as passenger 127.